Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the financial reports? Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 3, public comment. This time is reserved for comments from the public on matters not listed on the agenda. Please keep comments to 3 minutes. Gentlemen, this is your big opportunity.
Well, I'd really like to tell you some stories about Tim from back in the day, but they're gonna take more than 3 minutes, so
Okay.
I'll pass. Can I get 6 minutes, 1, 3 for your choice?
No, we'd have to cut you off. All right, thank you very much. Moving on to number 4, departmental reports. The police chief department report for June 1st through June 31st. Tim, do you have anything?
No, the call log is in the packet. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
I think what do we have? How many calls? Quite a few, no?
166.
66 calls. So another very busy month. Oh. Did you have that hugs and mugs?
That was,
That was
I think that was the
May.
last one.
It was, okay. Very good. Number 4B, Public Works Superintendent Report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, very, very busy month here. Water Department distributed 5.8 million gallons of drinking water in the month of June. Well pump 1 is back in service as of today. It was out for servicing. Everything is working as it should. Everything's honky-dory there. We had a pretty nasty water break that most of you know about on Sioux Hill. 2 weeks ago, we dug that. That was the biggest one that we've ever had since I've been here. And we lost a huge amount of water. A huge. And if you don't believe me, ask Greg. He knows all about it. So I think we were...
You can explain that, bring it down to the facts that what people understand is how many gallons of water a day were lost.
It was between 150 to 175,000 a day. It was almost enough to where our wells couldn't keep up to the demand that we were just pushing in front of. And I got some really ugly looking parts still laying in the back of my truck. If anyone would ever like to see them, to just see what we have under the ground in this town and how bad it is, I'd be more than happy to explain it to you and show you and basically take you out in the hole and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So, yeah, it was a bad one. Anyway, sewer department collected 15.7 million gallons of wastewater. The June discharge is completed. All parameters were met to the PCA standards. We did discharge 37 million gallons of wastewater in that, so that was a big one as well. There's just continuous work at the wastewater site. There's a guy out there mowing every day, at least 4 days a week, and then he's odds and ends and maintenance and trimming and upkeep the other day. So he's extremely busy out there. August 6th, Minnesota Rural Water is coming to town again to host another wastewater training. I said this last year too, and I really think it's a big deal. Puts us on the map in a good spot, a really good spot. It puts us out there as if we're trying. We want to be involved, we want to be included, we want to make things better, we want to help people, we want to have people come in the community and learn from our problems, from our mistakes. We even pick some stuff up from other people. It's really good. It's a really good thing that I can't say enough about Minnesota Rural Water. They're good. Yeah, I think they're expecting almost like 60 people in attendance to this, so it's pretty good. Last year was, I think, 40. So the Min-Warren emergency response trailer, which we talked about a couple meetings ago, I think that's about ready to get delivered and then be housed here, most like permanently. That should be happening here in the next couple months. Street department.
Did they put any of those blue,
I just got them on there yesterday.
the blue bag
Yep.
ladders?
Yep, and they're thinking like 1,000 feet. Yeah, so they looked for, I think they looked for like 6 or 7 months. They found them, and then they were trying to get, of course, a vendor to supply a bunch, and they finally found the vendor that was willing to supply them. So
That's awesome.
yeah, and it'll be sitting right there at the shop here in the next month too. So street department, pothole filling as always. You're going to touch on the storm sewer, the FEMA stuff. And then the cemeteries look awesome. Mark Lang's doing a knockout job up there. He is working like crazy. There's 32 hours of mowing alone at both cemeteries. Yet alone weed whipping and trying to make up for everything that was, that needs to be done on top of it. So we're very, very busy.
When you have the 60-some people at work, you need.
We're up at the depot. Yep, and I think there's 8 vendors coming this year. Our compliance officer from the MPCA is coming down. He's gonna give some updates, and
When are those dates again?
the 6th of August. Yep. Yep. There'll be lunch there provided. I think I'm actually grilling, so if anybody wants to, stop in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Phil, I'd like to thank you guys for making the town look nice for the 4th of July, having the park cut, grass cut nice, and the boulevard's looking good, and the crew at the campground, they did a nice job down there. And it's nice to see that the town's looking nice for the 4th of July and for upcoming United Days here.
Very good, thank you.
Moving on, 4C Technology / Library Report.
Do you want to touch on that?
Actually, on the library report, well, we decided to cut the hours on Monday from 8 o'clock down to 7 o'clock. There wasn't a lot of people showing up in the later hours there. Tried to save some money there by cutting those hours. And then on Thursday, we'll be closing at 5 now. They won't be open till 8 o'clock anymore. There just wasn't a lot of people coming in at that time. We're trying to get the word out to people so they'll be aware of the time changes. Library's been putting on more events lately, which is nice. They've been putting on some movies, and they're having other people show up to entertain the kids and having reading hours and things along that nature. And it seems to be working well. There are people showing up. We're getting some good numbers to those events, and Shelby's been working hard on that to keep it going. And that's about, I guess, all I can remember from the last meeting, what we touched on.
Just a question, when school is on again in September, I don't know if their library board should put up feelers at the nighttime usage by students, if that would be something to think about again.
Yep, we could
Or
definitely
check
check it
into
out.
that, because that's when the students used it more than.
Yep, that makes sense during school hours and having schools in session. We can definitely bring that up at the next meeting and discuss that.
Technology, Tim, anything?
I can't remember if we talked about this at the last one or not, but the internet access and connecting to our server down at the campground is now done. I think the phone is set up as well now, isn't it? If not, that's the last piece, but other than that, everything is set up down at the campground.
Very good. And I don't know if Rory has anything to add into that, but I guess not. Moving on to 4D City Engineer.
The minutes from the last meeting are on your table. The couple big things, one's the capital improvement project, which we'll talk about tonight. Special assessment policy we'll talk about tonight. As far as the trail to the school, SEH will start working on putting together plans and routes for that trail. And then the next one's the water model project. Phil did some work with the PRVs, the pressure reducing valves. I'm gonna say we can just tear all those out. Then on July 15th, Phil is going to do some testing with the booster station to see if we can pump from the wells to the water tower without the booster station, or if we still do in fact need the booster station. So we'll find out the results of that sometime after that. That'll be kind of a big one to see what exactly we all need with our water system. That's about it.
Questions by the council? Just a question on the pumps. We have 3 pumps?
Two.
2 pumps. And we think we don't need them?
No. We have 2 wells.
I mean, the stations.
The booster station?
Yeah, booster stations.
The booster station, we want to find out if we need, so to go from the wells to the booster station to the water tower is how it works right now. So it just kind of gives it an extra boost up to the water tower. The pressure reducing valves, we have 3, right? So we have one that goes to Mercy Hospital, which we needed to open all the way up for their fire suppression system. We have one on Sioux Hill that is broken, basically.
In the open position.
Yeah, so that one is not reducing anything. And then the third one's in the booster station.
Correct.
So of those 3, basically, they're all open right now. We're not reducing anything. I would say that.
Were they put in before the new water tower?
They were put in to accommodate the new water tower
Oh,
because the well pumps weren't quite big enough.
but so right now we have everything wide open anyway.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions by the council? Discussion? Hearing none. Thank you. 4C Chamber of Commerce updates.
Do you want to open the public hearing?
Before the chamber?
Yeah, because it's scheduled for 4:14.
No, we'll let Lois finish up too. There's so many people here for the public hearing.
We'll get right with you. Thank you.
Okay, of course, this weekend is Agate Days. On Saturday, we've got lots going on. There's art in the park that starts at 9, goes till 5 o'clock. We've got some music down at the park starting at 11, a jam session, bluegrass jam. We got the Stampede down on Elm Avenue here. It's 3 p.m. And there's, people can go to come right in this room here for a rock identification presentation from 11 till 2 before the Stampede. Or you can go out to the state park and see some agates from all over the world. Ours is a Lake Superior agate, so it's a little different than agates in other places. There'll be free shuttle rides provided by Arrowhead Transit from 9 to 5 on Saturday between Art in the Park and the Gem and Mineral Show and Stampede. And at 4 o'clock is a fireman's steak fry down at the fire hall. Yeah, I used to say you've got to get there early to get your steak because they only have a limited number, but in the last few years they've had a few left. And coming up is a triathlon on July 20th. They start at the park at 7:30 with a swim and they bike and they do a run. August 2nd is a golf outing at the golf course. That's they start registration at 1 o'clock and it goes till 2 o'clock is a start. And there's no Willow River Days the end of July this year. I was at a Willow River City Council meeting and it was like Hockey Association was trying to get something going, but it was just too little too late, so they're going to work on it for next year. They definitely want to bring Willow River Days back, and a lot of people are volunteering, but they don't want to be in charge of anything, so that's been a problem. And starting August 10th is well, actually August 9th through 12th, I think, and the 11th is the Ma and Pa Kettle Days in Kettle River. The parade is on Saturday at 11. There's a Miss Kettle River candidates. There's a coronation probably Friday night. So lots of things coming up. Tomorrow is a chamber meeting at the Chickadee in Barnum at noon. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Lois.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving on to number 5, this is a public hearing for the street and utility capital improvement plan, and I'd like to open the public hearing at this time. You need a motion? Do you have a motion? Second. Have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I have a question I got to ask you. Did we have this in the paper?
Yep.
Yes. and posted on the two boards, and posted on our website, and on Facebook, and in the utility bills.
Nice work.
Okay,
Nice work, you guys.
so it was well advertised, but.
You got quite the.
Just not Ted.
All right, Mr. Administrator, turn it over to you.
Do you guys want to present what you have for this one?
Yeah, we'll give you a summary of what we did and why, and then a summary of our findings.
All right, so for those who don't remember me, I'm Tyler Engdahl with SEH Engineering Company. This past spring, we completed the capital improvement plan for the city, for street infrastructure and utility infrastructure. Purpose of the capital improvement plan was to identify, plan, prioritize, and budget for future reconstruction projects within the city. This includes pursuing and securing funding opportunities, lays out some directions for all goes along with the capital improvement plan. As far as what we looked at the streets throughout the city, the sanitary sewer mains and the water mains. We did not look at the storm sewer because there's limited information on it and not a lot of it. So what we did is we met with the city staff, collected maps, files, took site visits, compiled all the data, reviewed the data, and then we took it, analyzed it, and we came up with a rating for each individual segment of the infrastructure throughout the city. So we gave an individual rating for sanitary sewer, for water main, and then for the streets as well. And for the streets, we looked at surface conditions, drainage issues, occupancy levels, so number of residents that live along the street, traffic loading, and then for the sanitary sewer mains and water mains, we looked at pipe materials, pipe sizes, pipe ages, and then we looked at additional rating for importance of trunk main or whatnot, or other maintenance issues that often occur at a certain spot. Then we took all of those individual ratings and combined them and overlapped them. Basically, a higher rating signifying a poor condition, the poorest condition of the segment that we were looking at. So we overlapped them and we added up the total of the ratings to get our priority list of projects. So this map here shows the top 10 projects within the city, or the poorest rated portions of city infrastructure in the city, which you have in front of you, that same map. There's also in the report, we have the list for all the remaining city streets and portions of the sanitary and water main. And so that's kind of what we then give to you as a city to use to base future projects off of. So now it can be used to plan and budget for construction projects and look at getting funding opportunities, which Matt's going to talk more about in a little bit, about assessment policies and how that relates to improvements for.
Just before you go, could you move that so that the camera is right on it? Sorry.
Since nobody else is here to see it.
We'll put it out to the community anyway. Thank you.
Yep. So basically everything that came from that, the city can use to plan future projects and plan for funding opportunities to do so. So if you guys have any questions, I can try and answer them. I've already heard this once.
It was a very good job, well done. And the 10 projects are definitely needed. A lot of discussion by the council as time goes on, I think.
So from my standpoint, some of the things that we're looking for is, first off, we did obviously, as he talked about, we did all of the roads, not just these 10, but these are the top 10. We looked at all of the infrastructure. The nice piece is that it gives a very, very top level estimate of the costs for some of these projects that are based on some construction averages. I will say that if we go out for bid, there will be a new estimate that's provided with more detail, and then obviously bids come in from contractors that are a little bit different. But this allows us to basically put together plans on timing for road projects. If we know the cost of a project, we know how much is coming in from sales tax, we know how much is coming in from the gas franchise fee, we can back into a number that is the gap, and how are we going to pay for that gap is what we can talk about later on. It's, without this, it makes it very, very difficult for us to start planning anything beyond this point. So the city's in a good spot as far as this goes, to utilize this in future decisions, basically.
Comments, questions by the council? We can open it up to the public. Public input?
I did not receive any calls or emails or letters on the CIP.
There's no, just a quick question, there's no savings or big savings, I take it, if you combined a couple of these projects together, like you have the one on Second Street, you have two different projects, like for site prep or anything like that, or people bringing in equipment, that's not no monumental amount of money really, is there?
You're definitely gonna have savings, just the scale factor. You save on mobilization costs for sure.
That's what I meant, is the
Yeah,
mobilization.
you'll save on that, but then just like with anything, if you're putting in 100 feet of water pipe versus 1,000, you're gonna get a better unit price on 1,000.
Because they're gonna be there longer, yeah.
Be there longer, they're gonna buy in bigger bulk.
Okay.
Production rates go up a little bit, so.
When we did Third Street, Kenwood, and a little bit of Elm, we tied in Northland bid on that project because they were also doing 73. So because they were doing an enormous project, the price per unit went considerably down. When you're talking about going from, say, 3 blocks to 4.5 blocks, you're not adding that much. Mobilization is probably I would say the only thing that you're gonna save on. You're not gonna get a huge reduction in, say, pavement, going from 3 blocks to 4.5. But the biggest thing that it does is it breaks up that gap in funding. So if we have a certain amount of sales tax and a certain amount of gas franchise fee, we can plan that every, say, 3 to 4 years of doing a road project. If we combine those two, that's a 6-year gap between the next project. So this allows us to kind of break it up a little bit. Would it be nice? I think it would also be nice if we're doing 4th Street that we would just go all the way to Birch. The same thing for 5th Street. If we're doing it, let's go all the way to Birch. That way, when the time comes that we do Birch, we've gone to the end on 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and the only piece that's left is 1st. There are still going to be a number of decisions that we are going to have to make when these projects come up. Some of you have talked to me about, say, sidewalks, trees, curbs, gutters. All of those things are included in these costs, but those are decisions that are going to come up with each project as well. As do we want to tie a couple projects together? Do we want to have sidewalks on one side, both sides, which side, neither, things like that. So this is a guideline, not necessarily a hard and fast rule.
I do have some comments, but I think I'd like to wait to comment till after we have the public hearing on the special assessment policy. And after the presentation, I'd just like to find it all, what I have to say at that time.
I will say that when we close the public hearing, what I'm asking is that the council approves just the CIP. So if you have any comments that might change somebody's mind, just about say the list of projects, now would be the time for that, not the cost or how we would pay for them, but just the list of projects.
No, I don't have a problem with
Okay.
the rest of the projects.
Okay.
I like how that's been set up so far.
Okay.
And Tim, you do bring up a good point. Something that you could be doing in the meantime is kind of defining what your improvements want to look like in the future. I'll use our other city of Proctor as the example, right? You actually get to doing the project, and then you get a lot of public input. I want sidewalk on both sides. You get a group of people that don't want any sidewalks or waste money and walk on the street, and then another group that says just put it on one side. Parking on both sides, no parking on one side, that affects the street width that we do. So there's those kinds of things you can be thinking about now at any time really before you get to that first project, so you can maybe get some of that out of the way. Do you want to set the standard? Street lighting comes to mind. There's a number of things, landscaping, plant trees, those kinds of things that you can guarantee are going to come up the first time you get to a project, so you can start thinking about those at any time.
Yeah, Phil and I were even driving down a road and there was a bituminous curb line rather than an actual cement gutter line. If you have an entire stretch of a block that doesn't have a catch basin in the middle of it, how do you want to handle the gutter line? One's cheaper than the other. One, they wear away with a plow. But basically, there's a whole bunch of things that go into a road project once we get there. This one is more about just a priority list and gives you a rough estimate. We did talk about what was included in the estimates. I want to say that sidewalk was on both sides of these estimates. Or did we do one side?
We had a 28-foot wide, I might have that.
There was some rough guidelines that we put into this.
Yeah, just for an assumption.
Yeah, I can't remember if we did one side or both sides for sidewalk. We did a normal width road. I think we did curb and gutter on both sides.
Yep.
So we did go, I think we went on the expensive side of a lot of these roads. There's obviously some things that you can add with trees and some things that we did not look at specifically, but.
Okay, so we did do sidewalk on both sides for the estimates, curb and gutter, yeah, 28 feet wide. So again, those are just assumptions we made for the purposes of the report, but things you have
I think
discussed.
Second Street only has sidewalk on the north side from Elm down. Second Street? They have it on both. They have it on both, don't they? Second Street, no, Third Street does,
First Street only has it on one side forward.
Except-
only a part, you have partial. And then Third Street has it on both sides. Fourth Street does, Fifth Street does. I think Sixth Street. Sixth Street has partial. And then down to the old baseball fields only on one side. So.
I think, it's all over the board, but
It
maybe
is.
recently some of the other similar sized communities I see are going to one side, generally on the north side. Sun gets it a little bit better, and then if you're gonna allow parking, you allow parking on that side, and even moving it adjacent to curb, so guys like Phil can maintain it without having to wreck a 4-foot grass boulevard every single winter with salt, sand, everything else. So, but again, those are all decisions that the council gets to make after hearing from the public.
Okay.
Very good, no, any more questions? All right. We're gonna do the time element or move on?
No, just do you have any comment on the CIP, on the capital?
I apologize for being late, I haven't seen any of this paperwork. I'm just wondering where Newberry is in the frozen pipes.
So the frozen water lines were added to the ranking of water mains. Do you want to look up where Newberry fell? One of the things that we were able to do is they put together kind of a scatter plot map, and where there was groupings of frozen service lines, those got a higher ranking. If it was more of a single item, that got kind of a middle ranking. So the more points you have, the worse off it is. So if you had 3, 4, 5 service lines that were freezing up every year, you got the most points bad. And then as you move down, Newberry was one that did have a cluster of them, but as far as the road and utility conditions, it was actually pretty low. We talked in an email about how far it bumped up, but it was still pretty far down
It's,
there.
yeah, it's about halfway on down the list.
Do you remember how far it went up? Because I know that there was a couple in the top 10 that went from like 6th to 3rd or 8th to 4th or something like that based on that map.
I'm guessing it jumped up at least 20 spots just looking at the rankings of the ratings.
So, and I understand why and what you're doing, but I'm more looking for a date, to estimate a year. And I
What
know
number was
that's
it?
a long ways out.
Oh, I can give you an estimate. What number was it?
Well, I don't have a total number of the segments that we have, but it's halfway, I don't know if we got maybe 60 down the list.
60, 180 years at this point.
Yeah. So I need to go talk to lawyers, basically what the city's telling me.
I mean, I can
Get the rest of the people to give a crap and move forward. I understand what you're doing and I support it. I got no problem with it. But I told you earlier I was gonna be the greasy squeaky wheel. That's why I'm here. To squeak, so I'm not forgotten.
Okay.
And we haven't talked since you gave me the information at the last city council meeting, and we talked about getting estimates and stuff, which you've been working on, and that's what this meeting is about. That's why I came in. So,
Yep, you definitely haven't been forgotten. I got you mentioned right here in my notes. I was gonna bring that up here.
I didn't think I was forgotten, but I hadn't seen anything, so I wanted to know what's going on.
We
see
have no
what-
idea how the ranking would fall out either.
No, I'm not judging you on that. I spent the whole day dealing with the fiber optic pole I just found out tomorrow. You know, I get it. I work with this stuff every day. I'm not judging. I still want to know when.
Well, none of these projects that we have would even be in consideration right now. This project wouldn't even been done. They wouldn't have done this work if we did not have a system in place right now of a sales tax of that coming in, because there has been no road projects and no money for them
I've
since.
lived here for
anyone's
20
done-
years.
So,
I've
and it's
seen
way
it.
before that.
I agree.
It's at least 20 more years before that. So now we are in a good spot. At least people can say there's something coming and we're gonna work down that list. We have the money set aside, money coming in, and we're gonna continue to knock these projects out. And it'll be other councils after us that'll keep dealing with this, because infrastructure is terrible in this town.
Absolutely.
It's getting, some areas are getting 100 years old, and that's what we're facing. It's been kicked down.
And that's why I wasn't pompous enough to come in here and going, I'm getting fixed today. I'm not that dumb.
Yeah.
So,
this is our guideline. If you haven't seen this, there is a guideline. The worst ranked right now is up there on that, and you can see that it's number 1 on the list, and that's $506,000.
I don't want to interrupt or anything.
Yeah, there's the top 10 as they ranked with everything put in there, streets, infrastructure, everything else involved. Even the ones that have been frozen, like your shot up 10 or whatever it was, or 20. We put the frozen pipes in there as well. So now we have a list to start with.
And I will say that was not included in the original time that we went through this until you came to the meeting. And honestly, it was a little interesting to see the scatter plot of what all the frozen services look like.
Yeah.
There was, what do we say, 3 or 4 sections where it was a group of all.
Splotches of them,
You know,
yeah.
6th Street down, right off of Arrowhead there was one, 2nd Street was one, Newberry was
Something
one.
Right, just down the street from City Hall.
Yeah,
too.
so I think that there was 4 spots that, like, you could tell that this was an area with, say, a bigger problem than just one person has something happening, so.
Right.
It was certainly worthwhile adding into the ranking.
The problem with that, your property is the main line is so shallow.
Well, yeah, that's probably why it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah. It's too shallow and that freezes your line, in other words, your line is coming off it at a shallow spot and that freezes.
I happen to know a civil engineer a little too personally, and I had her check the codes, and they were kind of pretty vague. The water lines are required to be below the usable frost line. That's code. So what does that tell us in this?
Yeah. Each
Not a
year
whole hell of a
changes,
lot.
yeah.
So,
What year was it when everyone was having issues with frozen lines? Was that 14?
2014,
Was that 14?
yeah.
I mean, that was, I think we hit 9 or 10 feet of frost that year. That
Yes, that's the year my neighbor, the reason we couldn't thaw it this year.
was, yeah.
And there's a bigger list than what you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm seeing just the top 10, which I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's within the next 2 years we're hoping to get done, top 10.
Well, it would be nice. But we, on page 61 of the report that we have, there is a list of what, how many do we have on here, like 40 or 50? Or, well, there's every single possible combination, I take that back. So 61 and 62 of the report that we have, if you don't have that, we can get you that information. And then you can see where it's at.
I think we put the entire capital improvement project on our website. That and the special assessment policy is on our website.
So 61 and 62 of that document, you will see that, sir.
And it's just, if you go to the City of Moose Lake's website, it's right on the,
Should be right on.
right on the homepage. There's the quick links on the
Well,
left.
it's got page 61 right there.
That's our,
Yeah, just right on under the popular links, there's the proposed special assessment policy and the 2019 capital improvement plan are right on the front.
You look at our figure 5.1, page 1.
this is just a
Two.
copy of it, but, yeah.
No, that's only half of it, that's the water going out. Now, how much problems are we gonna have with water coming back? How many of those spots are bad
With sewer main,
with sewers?
all of them.
All
Yeah,
That's what I
the
mean.
problem, yeah, the problem that we're running into is what Ted talked about is
It's old.
it's all old. We need a plan to address it and that's what we're working on, so.
Which honestly is why I'm here.
Very good.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Tom.
We have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passed. The next item is to motion to accept the, we're going to call it 2019 Street and Utility Capital Improvement Plan.
Yep.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same?
I'd like to thank the two of you.
Motion carries.
That was a ton of work, so thank you very much.
Our next item is number 6. I'd like to have a motion to,
You gotta wait 3 minutes for
3
that.
minutes.
Yeah, if you do 7A, I can do that in less than that.
All right, we move on to 7A. Previously discussed business, excuse me, 2018 flood.
The last meeting, we were talking about, they were just gonna finish them up. All the catch basins within a week of the prior city council meeting, they have all been completed. The contractor was paid, the money has been received from FEMA and Homeland Security. We have one catch basin that a little bit of work needs to be done on, that we're working on, but other than that, everything's been paid, we've been paid. The only thing that remains on that is I need to file some paperwork with Homeland Security and FEMA to close those projects out. But the projects themselves are all completed for that flood.
Any further questions by the council?
Now let's keep going.
Let's move on to 8A, new business, LGA increase.
All right, let me find what page it's on so you can look at it. Page 82 in your packet comes from the League of Minnesota Cities publishes kind of a summary and then a breakdown by city. In the last legislative session, LGA was increased. I think it lists here on page 82, the total increase was 4 million. In 2020 was increased by 26 million and then provides another permanent increase of 4 million in 2021. What this means to us, if you go to page 83, there's 5 columns of numbers. The fourth one is the important one. That is the what they finalized it at versus what we received for 2019, and that increase is $69,292. So just short of $70,000 was the increase that we will receive from LGA. So that's an excellent increase. What their claim to fame here is that this brings it back to what it was for 2002, which was the year with the highest appropriation for LGA. After 2002, they started with cuts to local government aid for cities. So this brings us back to prior to those cuts.
Is that a projected one for 2020 also?
Yeah, so 2020 is $70,000 more than 2019.
So that's good.
That is good.
Any questions by the council? So back to, I think it was like 69. What it is?
68.
68.
67 for the notice, but 68 is the policy.
So the next back on the agenda to number 6, which is a public hearing for the special assessment policy. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public hearing is now open. Mr. Administrator.
If we'd like to have Matt just present kind of the steps that we went through, some highlights about the assessment policy. I'm not sure if you were going to touch on them or not, but there are highlighted sections in your packet. You have a printed out copy on your table as well. If you don't want to go through it on your iPad, we need to cover some of the highlighted sections prior to making any final decisions. And then the final piece is we have some examples that SEH put together of what an assessment for a project would look like. So Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Again, Matt Wolf with SEH. So as kind of a parallel track to the CIP, in the CIP we talked about different funding sources for the projects that were identified in there. And one of them would be a special assessment policy. So Tim and I had talked for a couple of months, kind of realized that the city of Moose Lake did not have a defined special assessment policy. So you as a council authorized us a few months ago to come up with a draft policy, which, as Tim said, should be in your packet there. So just a little bit of background. Minnesota statute, chapter 429 is what it's called. really, it gives the councils of cities the ability to make improvements to their infrastructure, whether that's a street, sidewalk, utilities, etc. This can be reconstruction, it can be new construction, and it allows you to assess the benefited properties, a portion of the cost for those improvements. Really what this is set up for is to make projects more affordable for the city, for you to be able to maintain your infrastructure. If you do go down the assessment path, you have to assess benefited properties equally. You can't assess one person one thing and another different. So there's different ways you can do it, by the front foot, by the lot, etc., but it's got to be equal amongst everyone. If you were to use the special assessment process, just kind of a little bit of background here, the way this would work, we'll pick on 4th Street here a little bit. The first thing you would have to do as a council, if this were to get adopted and you go down that path, is you start out with a feasibility study. You'd have to order a feasibility study to get done that identifies the improvement, kind of the total scope of the project, the cost of the project, and then it has to make a statement: is the project feasible, is it cost effective, and it has to identify how you pay for it. So that would be the first step you would do. You would accept the feasibility report, and then you would call for a public improvement hearing. So the public improvement hearing would be advertised for 3 weeks, I believe it is, etc. You'd hold a hearing, and then you would present the feasibility report findings. Here's what a project is, here's about what it would cost, here's how we're proposing to assess, and then you get all of the public input, and then you as a council would decide whether you want to move forward with the project. So after that public hearing, you have 6 months to order the improvements, basically start the design. If you go past the 6 months, then you have to hold another public hearing and start the process over. So ordering improvements, that's basically telling us or whoever you have, start the design, get the plans ready, get ready for public bid. You would then have to authorize us to advertise the project. It would have to be a full public bid. It's going to have state wage requirements, etc. We would go through that, get the bids in, and then bring it back to you, and you would have to make a motion to accept the bid. Construction happens, we get done with the construction, we work with your city staff, we prepare an assessment roll, preliminary assessment roll. Here's what the actual costs now are, and here's what the actual assessment's going to look like. At that point, then you have to do what's called the assessment hearing. So then we would take all of the final costs of the project, have the preliminary assessment roll, and we would present all that in the assessment hearing. Again, it has to be published for 3 weeks or so. The public comes in. It's their time to see the assessment, but also express concerns if they have them about the assessments. If that all goes well and you as a council are comfortable, then you would have a resolution adopting the assessment roll. And then it works with you as far as when you go to your county and when you actually get it to start and what the payment terms would be, things like that. So that's the overall process if you were going to go down this path. So in the assessment packet you have, there's a couple of highlighted areas in there. Some of this is, I don't want to say boilerplate, but very standard language for what we would do in other places. The highlighted areas are ones that I had talked about with Tim, and not ones that you're probably going to decide anything on tonight, but things that would be up for discussion is, like one is private development. So if you have a brand new private development, most communities would say that's going to be 100% assessment to the developer or whoever he sells the lots to. Pretty standard thing, but you don't have to do it that way. So I leave things like that identified for, in case you know of a development coming up or something. Frontage definitions I left highlighted really just so you could review how we define the frontages. Because you have front feet, you have corner lots, you got irregular shaped lots, and how those would get assessed, or get measured, I should say. So again, there's other small, minor highlighted things in there that we could take a look at. Sidewalks is another one. Right now, we're saying if you have a brand new sidewalk that never existed, we're going to assess it at 100%. But if it's an area that it's
ready developed, you know, it's a 30% assessment. So there's nuances in there. Again, you can change this to how you want to see that. So for purposes of this report, we set this up as a 30% assessment. Where does 30% come from? Really, it comes from a little bit of experience. We know that once you start getting over that 30% assessment, you can only assess the actual benefited amount to the property, right? So you would, in some cases, actually get an appraiser to come in and appraise this house or this property prior to the project and then say, all right, with all these improvements, what would be the value after it? And that value is all that you can assess. Unless you have 100% of the people signing off saying you can assess me 100% or more than 30%. Then it's a different story, but assuming that doesn't happen, we know generally after you get above 30%, you start to generally exceed what that benefit's going to be. So in the report, it's set up for 30%. I'm going to walk you through just an example right over here. So we took the first project on the list, which is 4th Street. So this is an example, and I think you have these in your packet, so I apologize if it's a little small up here. But you can see 4th Street, Douglas, the house 212. There's 3 different sheets. One talks about, the top one is a 30%, a 25%, and a 15% assessment rate. So I'm just going to start with the one that is the Moose Lake example, 30% assessment. We broke this into just some very big categories for you, but you can see that section of 4th Street, the total roadway costs about $283,000, total sanitary costs about $76,000, the total water costs $146,000, for a total project cost of $506,000. The next column down just simply says assessment percentage in red there at 30%. 30% times the estimated total cost. You can then see between the roadway, the sanitary, and the water, you would assess about $151,000 or $152,000 to the property owners, and then paid by the city is about $354,000. That equates out to an assessment of about $190 a front foot. The next line down is kind of what that means. So 4th Street, a little bit bigger lots. So I just picked a 100-foot lot as an example. Some are bigger, some are smaller. But if you have 100 feet of frontage on 4th Street, an assessment of $189 a foot, that total assessment to be paid by the landowner would be $19,000. Doing some very quick math, if you do a 15-year term, you're looking at about $105 a month. So just to clarify, the monthly cost, the reason that there's a monthly cost is when you have an assessment that goes on your property taxes. Most of us have an escrow payment where you're paying monthly into your mortgage, your property taxes, homeowner's insurance, all of those things. So the monthly cost is generally speaking what people would pay when paying an assessment.
And the landowners do have the option to pay upfront in full and not have to pay any interest on this at all. Otherwise, they are charged the interest rate that you pay plus whatever it is on top of that, usually a little bit more. So going through that same exact 4th Street project, the project cost, then at the 25% assessment rate, the project cost across the top remain the same. So if I jump down to the middle of the page, the assessment percentage in red is just changed to 25%. And then you can see you're assessing about $126,000 of the project versus $151,000 to the landowners, and you as a city are paying $380,000 versus $354,000. So again, if I have a 100-foot lot down at the bottom, that assessment rate now is $158 a foot versus $190. Total assessment goes down to about a little under $16,000, so $15,800. Again, if you were to look at it on a 15-year term, that's about $88 a month. So you can see the difference there between 30 down to 25. The last example is a 15% projected assessment rate. Again, project costs remain the same. I'll jump to the middle column. Assessment percentage, you'll see at 15%. Now we're assessing about $76,000 of the project, and the city is paying about $430,000 of that $500,000 project. Again, with a 100-foot lot, that comes out to be about $95 a foot. So $9,500 is your total assessment in that case, or roughly $52, $53 a month. So makes a big difference where you go. I would say typically I don't see them as low as 15%. Usually they're 20 to 30. Again, that's because it normally comes in with what the appraisals do. Every project is a little different, and I think as a council, you always have the option to change something for a specific project. Your assessment policy is a guideline, that you have a standard.
What do you mean by that? You can lower the assessment?
For the entire project, not on like a person by person thing, but if you did 4th Street at 30%, when you go to do the next project, you can do it at 29.73%, but not.
Yeah. So you always have the option as a council for a specific project once you start the process of the feasibility report and hearings to pick something. Then it becomes a fairness to your customers, which are the residents of the city. How, why are you going to assess this street 30 and this one 20? Sometimes there's real good justification to do that, and other times there really isn't. So then it's a matter of, the politic end of it. So anyway, that's what we have to present. I am happy to try to answer any questions about either this or what's in that example assessment policy. Otherwise, as Tim said, is for your review, and the stuff that's, well, I want you to read the entire thing, but the stuff that's in yellow, that's highlighted for sure, are things that we want to get input on before you would, formally adopt the assessment policy.
Yeah, so if I can just go over a couple things, because I think it's important to note just a few things. The first is, after we do the capital improvement project, which was just passed, there are a couple of things that we know and some things that we don't know. So what we know is, with our sales tax, we will bring in X amount of money per year. With the gas franchise fee, it's X amount per year. So what you're left with is this gap, and how do we pay for that? That is the unknown that we're trying to remove so that we can try to plan for all of these future projects. Those are the gap in funding that we have. An assessment policy, as Matt touched on, is equal for everyone. And I think that one of the key parts to this is exactly that. I would suggest that you take this as seriously as you can, so that we're not changing it project by project and not having those conversations of, well, you did it 30 this time, next time we're going to do it 25. Why? I think the formal process of assessments takes out some of that, but you certainly want to set this policy up as best you can right off the bat, so that you're taking some of those things out. The next piece is there is absolutely no correct way to do this. There's a bunch of different variables, and we're going to go over some of it, but there's 1,000 different ways to do this, and none of them are right, wrong, or indifferent. No matter what, it's going to come down to somebody's opinion. So the way that it is written right now, I will say, is my opinion. It can certainly change a bunch of different ways, and that is perfectly fine. The last thing I would say is this assessment policy, the way that it's written now, anything that comes back from it, changing it from 30 to 25, 30 to 20, whatever the case might be, what it really does is it stretches out the number of years in between projects. So So the way that it's written right now, I'm saying that we can do a road project fully funded every 3 years, just planning on the sales tax and those things that we know. Those are, we can put together kind of a set number of years for each project. When you back off of that percentage, you basically go from 3 years to 4 or to 5 or to whatever the case might be. It's not right or wrong, that's just what the gap is and how long it takes to fund it. So before we start going into it a little bit, does anybody have any questions about the process itself? Okay.
Process of assessment.
The process of assessing or the process of how we put this together? No?
And Tim, I don't know if, you know, one other thing that we talk about in the CIP too, it's sort of separate here is, you know, you also have your utility rates in Moose Lake. We did not do a utility rate study as part of any of this work. If you're really gonna look long-term and develop your construction plans, you know, I would recommend you do a utility rate study and look at, is what you're charging right now enough to even maintain the infrastructure you have? And that's just a separate piece of just fixing what's breaking. It's that maybe this isn't even capital improvement, it's just maintaining what you have. So there's another piece of it that you could also look at in addition.
And adjust along
And adjust along the way. So that would be in addition to your assessment, to your gas tax, to your sales tax, to other funding sources.
So if we can, there are highlighted sections that we talked about that specifically need to be pointed out and a decision needs to be made. I sent you all an email, which I printed out, that had my explanation, but I would still like to go through it for the public as well. Page 5 is, although on here it says page 6, but page 6 is, or no, page 5 was the assessment period. That one wasn't highlighted, but it is one of the sections that I did want to point out. The assessment period that we selected for this policy is 15 years. 15 years is just generally speaking what you issue a bond for. You can issue a bond for 20, you can issue a bond for less than 15, any number less than 15, but generally speaking, most road projects are assessed at 15-year periods. So it makes sense to match the assessment to what we're issuing the bond so that we're not fronting the cash for property owners. It just makes it easier as we make payments, homeowners are making payments as well.
Tim, can I just add one thing to that? That's a great thing to point out. I should have highlighted that. I agree with everything. That is also one that may change by project, because if you get like a PFA loan or grant or loan, I should say, and the PFA loan is for 20 years, it will force you to do the assessment for 20 years. Or if you get it for 10, it's going to force you to do it to 10. You can't have a difference between those two. So that is one you will look at it at every individual project.
I got a question there. To me, if this was passed, I would like to see a statement in there that if a property is already being assessed, that they are not assessed a second time until the first assessment is paid for. In other words, not being assessed and paying twice.
We covered that in a section.
Yeah, so you're talking about if they have an assessment for the sewer and they're paying on that, and then the water gets done, well, they're still paying the sewer assessment, they don't have to start paying their
No matter what
water.
the change, if there's, like, they do a full project on that road and they're being assessed for 15 years and all of a sudden the city decides to come in and do something all over again, that they're not assessed the second time. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so I agree with that. For some reason, I could have swore that we talked about that and covered it somewhere, but I don't remember where, so I will,
See if I can find that while you're
I'll
talking
just
here.
write that down, and I would say that if this were passed, that would just be something that we would need to add in. So no double. Okay, So does anybody have any question about, say, the length of the assessment? Okay, so then we'll move on. Page 6 is private developer projects. There's two options that are written into this already. The bottom one is what I would suggest, which is to require the developer to pay 100% upfront, Actually, the way that it's written is basically the developer pays for 100% of it, but only 50% of it can be either assessed to property owners, or the developer has to pay for 100% of the costs upfront on their own. Now, we've had instances of this in the past where we did not allow any assessments onto any of the lots. So John Brown Drive, Langhorst, all of those things. Those lots, the developer paid for the extension of those services out there. So there's two different ways that you can handle this one. I would also say that this one matters probably the least of what you select, because anytime that a developer came in and wanted to do this, we would just put together a developer's agreement that would spell all of this out anyways. But is there a certain way that you would prefer to have it written into this policy just as a guideline?
I prefer to keep it as we have been, 100% upfront.
So we would not allow them to basically ask us to assess, say, 50% of it, and they would pay 50% up front, and then as they sold lots, that they were paid off. They would just need to pay for 100% of it.
Just to help development.
Yeah, you clear on that, Matt?
Yep.
Council, I'd like to hear from other people.
I would say if that's what we've been doing, that's we should continue to do it that way.
That, if you were writing something down on a piece of paper, that seems to me to be the one that would make sense. You can always come back from that, but it would be really hard to say, yeah, we'll let you assess 50%, and then somebody comes in and you say, nah, we're gonna make you pay 100%. So I think if we're gonna write something down, I think that's probably the right way to write it down. And then in a developer's agreement, if we needed to, we could come back from that a little bit. Make sense? All right. Page 7 is corner lots, which is maybe the most confusing. Let's skip that one for now. Page 10 is.
Well, wait a minute.
Sorry.
I think what I just said would have covered it, wouldn't it?
Well,
If you have an assessment on one street.
but what if you do them both at the same time?
None of our plans have that right
No,
now
I
in our
don't
top
see that in the
10.
new
But yeah, I
plans.
agree, down the road.
I would say that that would just cover it.
So the way that we have it set up right now in your draft is, if you're on a corner lot, you're gonna get assessed 30% for each street, but you're only gonna get assessed for utilities for whatever street your utility comes off of. So you can't get charged twice for any utility period, because you only get one service. But the roadway would be assessed 30% for each road. So again, that's one that you want to think about. Do you want to do that? Do you not want to do
I
that?
think I was hoping that statement I made would cover that. But if we're not doing it at the same time, and none of us may be on the council when we get to that if we're so far down the road. But I'd like to have that, to me, as part of that if you're on a corner lot, you're assessed only one side.
Okay, so let's just cover this one now. The way that it's written now, and the way that I try to explain it is in two different parts, like Matt's talking about, is utilities are one thing, roadways are another. So you can only get utilities once. So whichever side the utilities come from, it doesn't matter if it's your first assessment or your second assessment or the first time that we come through, no matter what, you will only be charged for utilities if your utilities come off of that side. So there's a chance that you could be assessed twice at different times if you do both road projects, because you weren't being assessed for a utility project on the original one. So say we did this road and your utilities weren't on there, you didn't get charged for utilities. Then we come through and do this one, I would say that we do want to assess that property owner, because that's where they're getting their utilities from. The second piece to this is the roadway. So the roadway, I would make the argument that the benefit to the front of your property is just as much a benefit to the side of your property because you're accessing your property. I would,
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Your driveway may be on one
Yeah,
side.
we only have one driveway.
You may never use that other street, except to walk on.
and then there's alleys, and then there's garages on one side and the house on another. There's a million different options that we can go down. I'm just trying to put it all into one easy paragraph. So I guess for that argument, if your garage is on the side, but your home faces another way, I would say that you benefit more from the side street than you do in the front.
We can argue that otherwise.
Wouldn't it be the side that your utilities come in, that would be the,
Could be, could not be. We
But
just
you're gonna have some places
we just
that they don't both come in the same side.
Yeah, there might be places where you have water coming in one side and sanitary coming in the other.
We just changed the utilities on one person's house where it came in from the front, and now they come in from the back. This is why this one's the most confusing and almost a case-by-case basis. You're trying to pick a way of assessing a million different options one way.
And Mayor, the one thing I would say, and it's a decision for the city, is if you want to write something that says they can't pay, and this one says until the other is paid, and this went half lot, if you're on a corner lot and your front street in front of you gets done, but your utilities are off the side street, and you get charged that 30% street assessment, and 4 years later, they come back and redo the water main on the side street, you get a new water main, new water service. Now you're not gonna be able to assess that person for 6 more years till, or more than that, 11 more years till his first assessment's paid off. So you're gonna front all of that money as a city, and then are you going to charge the whole amount, then starting at a different year, or would you forgive the first 11 years?
There's a lot more into it because
Yeah.
that person is paying taxes, they're paying fees, they're paying.
Yeah.
We did pass a special tax. I mean, there's a lot more things into it than just what we're talking here.
No, I understand, I'm just saying as far as the fairness
I'm
of
thinking
what do you
of,
do with the deferred assessment if you defer
Yeah.
it?
Well, that's why I brought it up. If
Yeah.
they've been assessed already, I think we would be taxing them even more. I don't mean tax, but taxing them economically by doing a second assessment when we're already assessed them. That's my opinion.
I would think that it would make more sense to agree to where the benefit is coming from than saying that you can assess them once but not twice. So if we can all agree where they're getting a benefit, then I think that we can determine where they should be charged. So if their utilities come off of one side or the other, that's where their benefit is. We would all say that you could be assessed for that because that's the only side that you're getting benefited from. If you guys are saying that you don't think that the front road and the side road are the same benefit-wise, then let's say that the side road is of no benefit and the front road is the one that's benefited. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would think you probably want to do it more that way, only because to play the devil's advocate, if you're a person on a corner lot, that your utilities come off the side street, but all of your neighbors have everything in the front street, now they're gonna get assessed 100%, but the guy in the corner might not have to pay his utility assessment for 11 years if his utilities got done a few years after the main road project.
Right, I think,
So you might have
I think it is,
some inequity there.
I think what it
We're gonna
does
have
though.
inequities everywhere with assessments. We will hear that.
I think one of the things it does is it makes it so that we're not double charging anybody for anything. So you only get charged for one road, and you only get charged for one direction of utilities, no matter if it's this way, that way, whatever. You can only be charged for the roadway if it's on the front, and you can only be charged for the utilities if they're whichever road we're doing. Does that make sense?
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Does
So
that
take
sound?
the corner lot and just define it as you get charged for
Whichever side the
front.
utilities come off of.
Yes.
And the roadway that's in front of your house, whatever the address is. Okay. That one is confusing. Page 10 is service lines. This one, this will definitely be your fairness one. So this is, we're doing a road project and we come along and your sewer line, your service sewer line is completely trashed and it's letting in a bunch of I&I, and we tell you that you need to replace it and we're gonna do it while we're doing this project. How do we pay for that? Now, the way that it's written is harsh, but what I'm saying is, the truth is that's your service line. It only benefits you. It's not okay to charge your neighbor for your service line. And I also am saying that the city's not gonna pay for your service line either. So, the trouble comes in where when somebody flushes their toilet and it goes away, they don't see that there's a problem. Or they turn the tap on, water comes in, they don't see that there's a problem. We come through and tell them, you have a problem, you have to replace this. How would you like to charge that?
Are you talking about during the project?
Yes.
This
Only during the project, yes.
In a normal, say, complete reconstruction project, sanitary sewer, you're gonna replace the sewer main, and you're gonna replace the service from the main to the right of way. And that's just gonna be part of the 30%. Correct. Across the board. If you're out there and from the right of way to the house is completely defective, or you were not planning to replace the services to start with, and we find them bad, then you would say, all right, we're gonna assess the homeowner 100% for that service, because that's their service.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
you would replace the service from the
Curb line.
curb line to their home? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if we determined that it's faulty and it has to be replaced.
Isn't that, I mean, that's private property. Can they say, I don't want that replaced?
Yes.
They can.
No, they
You can't, and you could shut off their sewer.
right,
You should have their water.
right.
So normally, you would tell them they have to go get it replaced, go hire their own contractor, and they are gonna pay for 100% of it anyway. If you're there and the hole's dug and everything else and there's a problem, you know, this is an option to replace it and
Well, just wait a minute, okay, the project's going on. You get to the house, they have a bad sewer and water. And you say, you gotta get this replaced now. And they can't get a contractor for a month.
No, our contractor would do it.
Our contractor's gonna do the whole thing. And then we're gonna charge them 100%.
Correct, for their, just where their property line, where we've already defined that it's theirs, they would pay for 100% of
And my
that.
only question is, okay, now they have no option to get the lowest bidder to save them money.
Well, okay, so yes, we would allow them, I guess, to find their own contractor. It would just have to meet our,
Timeline, which would be probably.
maybe, but it would have to meet our specs of how they're tying it in and all of those things.
Ted, we would have already had a public hearing on that, they had already had an opportunity to come here, we had already sent them notices that their street is gonna be going up, now is the time for them to do an inspection or have an inspection done of theirs, because if we come upon it and it is faulty, it will be replaced at the going rate while we're doing the project.
But how would they know it's bad until it's ripped up?
So I can see where we're going is the 100% is harsh. So let me ask you this the other way. So let's say that we don't do 100%. We have two options. One is that we charge it to the project, which I would say would be unfair for me to pay for your water or sewer line. I think we could all agree to that. The second option would be that the city just pays for that, and I would again say the city we already passed policies that we don't pay for people's service lines now. Why would we, just because we're doing a road project, suddenly pay for somebody's service line?
the other thing, Tim, that we could maybe do if you wanted is in this service line area, say that if we're reconstructing the mains and services, right, they're gonna get assessed 30% of the main. This is also meant to be, even on a normal reconstruction project, what are you gonna assess from the main to the right of way? You wanna assess it at 30%, or do you wanna assess it at 100? If you wanna just keep it at 30, I would change this to say it's gonna fall into that, but if your service line is found to be defective from the right of way to your house, you could just say that is the homeowner's responsibility to replace and fix. Because honestly, during construction, to your point, it doesn't happen often that while we're digging that day, we say, oh, it is really bad all the way to the house. I mean, normally, we're gonna televise the main, we don't televise all the services, we're gonna replace the services to the right of way, and we're gonna notify every single homeowner and say, this is the best time you're ever gonna have if you're worried about your service from your house to the right of way line. Get it coordinated, go hire your contractor, get the lowest bid, get all of the things you want, and get that done.
So that's the way that we do things now, is if we find one that is defective, which I would say that we know that pretty much all of them are defective, we have never made somebody replace, say, their sewer main. Even though we know that we have I&I issues, and it's safe to say that 50% of it comes from service lines, we don't go door to door telling people that they need to replace their service line. So technically, the policy that we have right now is that we would just tell them, hey, you have a problem with this, it's your responsibility to fix it, and then move on with our day.
Or use your contractor. I imagine that'll always be an option. Because some people will not have, they won't be able to just go and get somebody like that. And if you've got both sides of the street and you've got 20 homes, and like y'all say, for instance, 6th Street, where all the homes are probably 80 years old or older, you're talking maybe everybody has to have their sewer replaced. So how are you gonna get contractors?
And this gets to a really big thing.
Yeah.
Question that even goes outside the boundaries of an assessment policy. For example, again, I'll pick on Proctor because Tim's been there and I'm still there, but there they have now a point of sale policy, so that we have identified many services in the city of Proctor that are non-compliant. You notify them, but you can't go make them dig it up that day. But what we're saying now is before that house can change property owners in any way, shape, or form.
That has to be corrected.
It has to be corrected before that sale can go through. So that's a different way to accomplish from the right-of-way to the house, or the right-of-way to the main if you're not doing a reconstruction project, and it's just, so you're getting into bigger things than just this.
I know, but can I say something? Okay, I'm looking at this assessment project, this on 4th Street, for example. That's a $500,000 project, and you're already looking at a yearly assessment of about a little over $1,200. That's on top of people's taxes now that are already high. Okay, then you make them put in a new sewer to their house, which is gonna cost $6,000 plus, and you're adding another, I don't know, how are people gonna afford this?
That's a 30%.
I know, but
I know what you're
you're gonna
saying.
go around, you got somebody like on first, you got 3 projects here over $1 million. That's double that. You think people can pay $2,600 extra a year on taxes?
Oh yeah.
That's
Hold
insane.
on. Just because the project costs more doesn't mean that the assessment's more. That's just a longer project. The assessment will be the same. The second thing is, again, this isn't saying that it has to be set at one level or another. It's simply saying that we recognize that we need to do some of these road projects. How would we like to go about funding it? If there's a better option, I don't know what it is.
Well, we're not gonna have people being able to afford to live here. My thought is we're just gonna have to pay for the roads as we do them.
Which we
Personally,
can.
I can't. pay this kind of money. I mean, my taxes are probably the highest, second, third highest in Moose Lake. This is unrealistic for me. I'd have to sell my house and move. I don't know how other people that are retired and are on GA or whatever that can afford this kind of stuff. We're gonna push everybody right out of town. Everybody always says, we're already the highest, one of the highest tax places here. This is gonna just force everybody to sell their house. I don't know. I know we have a problem, I know we need to fix it, but I can't see that assessment as being an option. I think personally, we're gonna have to just do it as we have the money. I can't support something like this.
Okay, just for conversation's sake, I think as far as service lines go, I think that we can handle it the same way that we've handled it in the past and just take that portion out. About assessing it, we would just.
Yeah, because then the assessment you see here would already include a brand new service to the right-of-way line anyway. There would be no additional service costs on top of anything.
Okay.
It's already new to the right-of-way.
I will say, when we get, there's only one extra one left. When we get to the end of this, I'm not trying to move on past your comments, I'm just saying that there's one left. When we get to the end of this, it will come down to, there's nothing left to decide in this other than do we want to do it or not and at what rate. So if we just finish up the sidewalks one, then we're there. So sidewalks, basically sidewalks is how do we want to handle the construction of new sidewalks, which one would fall basically under the development, which would be new constructed in a new area is 100%. If we put a sidewalk in where there was not a sidewalk already, it would be the same rate as, say, the road, the 30%. That would change if we change the assessment to some other percentage, but it would just follow the same percentage that we've been using for everything else. And then the final piece is how would we handle it if sidewalk is on the north side and not on the south side. My suggestion in here is that sidewalks are a benefit to that neighborhood. It doesn't matter if you live across the street from it or on the same side. That's what you would use to walk on. So you would just split the sidewalk cost amongst all residents that were on that road, rather than saying if you have a sidewalk in front of your property, that's only your benefit. So it's just dividing it evenly among the residents along that path. Any questions on the sidewalk ones? Okay, so then the final one is assessment rates, which is the 30% as it's written in here. And then the second piece I would say is, do you want to do this or not?
I have some things I'd like to say, some comments to make. I do know that, talking to people, that the number one thing that they want repaired and fixed in this town is streets, sewer, water lines. We've heard what Mr. Stevens has said he'd like to have his project fixed. I'm very worried about people being able to afford this. I'm very worried about the time that it will take to finish these projects. It appears that it won't be finished in my lifetime. And I also don't want to over-worry people with an assessment like this because their property might not be affected by this assessment if it's passed for decades to come. It might take decades to get to their property. And as far as paying it, rural America has not recovered from the last recession that we were in. There has been a recovery in America, but it's gone mostly towards the metro areas and not to places like Moose Lake or Duluth, actually. It's places like Austin, Texas, Florida, other places of the United States. So our population is still suffering from that. Our population and businesses peaked sometime around in the 50s. And since then, our population and our businesses have slowly declined. We are still losing businesses, we are still losing population. We have 100 less students in our school within a couple of years. And that is extremely concerning. While this has gone on, our population dropping over the last decades, the city has always continued to grow. The city government has always continued to grow. Our departments have always continued to grow. Our city councils in the past have always thought that there was a need to expand them. There probably was. I wasn't on those city councils, so it's easy for me. I don't know what the reasoning was behind all that. Our city should have been setting aside funding for these projects for decades. I realize that most of the budget is spent with the current government that we have, and it's not an easy situation. But they should have been setting aside something, no matter how small it was. If it was a few $1,000s, it was still something. And now we're sitting here with no money to fix an infrastructure that is completely falling apart. And now we have a city administrator that has to deal with this problem. Most of it not his making. He's inherited a lot of this problem. It's a very difficult situation for him to juggle. Now, in business, like over at the theater, I can talk about that because that's what I am in. Now, times are tough over there. They've been tough for a long time. I need tens of thousands of dollars in remodeling. And how am I going about doing that? My family's had to make many difficult, hard choices. We've had to cut employees. My last employee quit at the beginning of spring. We did not hire a new one. We need one. But in order to get remodeling done, that's a place I can cut costs. We've had to cut salaries. I've had to cut my own salary. We've cut electrical costs. We've cut heating costs. We keep the heat down to 55 degrees. And we turn it up when we are open for business. I clean the theater with a jacket on in winter to cut costs. We use our equipment till there's nothing left of it. And then we buy used equipment and use that even longer. We do more work ourselves, and we have to do that in order to get the funding to improve the theater. If I don't do remodeling, the theater will become dilapidated and people will no longer show up. So I have to make these difficult decisions. And I have to do that in a way without raising prices too high so I can keep my customers coming. In rural areas, you have to be competitive against the outer bigger cities, and that's very difficult to do. I can't be brand new like all the other brand new theaters, but I can be cleaner and I can be cheaper. And you don't want to have to raise, sure, I could go make tickets $20, but how many people are going to come? And I'm going to drive people away. This is all very similar to the problem that the city is in. If we continue to raise or to ask our townspeople, our citizens, to make sacrifices with taxes, with higher fees, and with assessments, we also have to ask our city to make sacrifices as well, if it's possible. Other small towns have closed completely certain parts of their departments. We do not want to do that. We need our departments. They do very valuable work for us. But some other towns have had to make those difficult choices in order to survive. without infrastructure, without roads, without sewer, without water, we do not have a town. We might as well just close up without this stuff. And we're all being asked to make difficult situations here. And there are no easy answers. Where do we get the money? You can start cutting. Nobody wants to start cutting things. That's very difficult. You're dealing with people's livelihoods. One way that we can address some of these problems is that we have to bring in as much business as we can. We have to bring in new business. We have to support our old business so we can get our sales tax up to help start paying for this. And to bring in new business, you know, we have land here available, and a lot of people think, like Mr. Inahar said in his newspaper article here, that we will solve the school's problems by bringing in new development. Well, how long is that new development going to take? It might take decades to get this land all developed. So that is not necessarily an easy fix, a quick fix. We don't know what the future is of Moose Lake. We don't know how fast this place is going to expand, or if it's going to continue to slowly decline. I'm very worried about the situation in this town. We must shop local. We need to have our population shop local. When people go out of town to Duluth or Cloquet to buy stuff, that sales tax is going to build new roads, sewers, and water lines in Duluth and Cloquet, not Moose Lake. We want that money here in Moose Lake so we can have more funding and revenue to build these projects. With new business, we bring in new jobs. With new jobs, we bring in new population. And it has to be in that order. You can't necessarily go and build a new school and expect people to move here because we have a new school. That is one reason that they will consider, but what is really going to make them move here is a good paying job. And they have to be good paying jobs, not just mediocre jobs. They have to be a job that you can raise a family out of. And in order for me to support, you know, these increases in assessments, I would like, and I know that the city council is committed to things like this, but the city council has to be committed in trying to manage the budget that we have now in a way that leaves us a little extra money every year to put towards these projects. We just can't keep asking our citizens to pick up the tab on all this stuff. It's going to take work by the citizens and the city to solve this issue. And like I said, I'm very worried about it, and I'm happy that we are working and we're taking this approach. I think Tim's worked very hard on it, and Mayor, all you guys have worked on it. You guys have all worked on it, and it's a start. But we have to take all this into consideration, or I don't know what the future of Moose Lake is. And those are just some of the things that I think of. I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. And like I said, I'd like to see a commitment from this council to try to make this as least painful for our citizens as possible. Because I agree with Chris, there are people in this town that are not going to be able to afford this. And some of them might be really worried about this, but like I said, at the rate we're going, some of their properties, they won't be affected. They might be moved out. They might have passed away by the time we even get to their properties. It'd be nice to be able to find a way to do these projects quicker, if it's at all possible. Because that's what the people want. And and they have been paying taxes in this town. And part of your tax money should be going towards these types of projects. How much is to be determined, and there is money that will be going from the city into this, but we have to make it as painless as possible as we can for our citizens. And I guess that's all I have to say on that.
I'd like to address some of those things you brought up.
Okay?
First of all, you said there needs to be a commitment from the council. When I came on here, I've only been here going five years now. And Mayor Ted Shaw kept always saying, you know, this levy doesn't do anything for us. And he really educated me on the levy. Okay, so if we're looking at a levy of 5%, who's paying for that? We have a very small segment of the population that's gonna pay for $24,000 is 5%, okay? So how do you then get more money? How do you get everybody to pay it? So Tim, being very strong-suited in finance, said, you know what, we're gonna keep pushing for the sales tax, because everyone that comes through the city of Moose Lake pays for something. It's not just the residents paying for it. So now we have a sales tax, and that money is going into a fund for these projects. So that's a commitment from this council. How else do you do it? How do you get everyone to pay? Well, you have to have usage fees, because everyone uses certain products. They're going to use natural gas, so we have to have usage fees, franchise fees, where everyone uses, the end user, not just the citizens. So that's another way that we're committed as a council. How do we entice people to come in here? What was created? We talked about this for a few years now. We now have an economic development committee. How do we entice people to come here? Well, we're giving people breaks on their taxes for this new people that come here and move here and build here. So that's another way that we're enticing. We're committed as a council. So, I mean, we can all say that we want things done, and we want them done quickly, and we want to put money towards certain projects, but we do not have the money, and other councils that sat here before did not have the money because the only options they had was a levy. Look at how much it would take you at $24,000 at 5% to pay for $506,000. You couldn't do it. So this is one example of how we would do it. I agree with Chris, no one can afford 30%. But we need to get there as fast as we possibly can without pushing people out. But the council has been very committed, and I commend this council, and I really appreciate Tim for all the work that he's done in sharpening things and saving us money. And now that we have an economic development committee, we're doing some pretty good things in the city, and if anyone wants to know what's happening there, we meet right before this at noon. So, I mean, there's a lot of good things that are happening. So we do have some tough decisions, and we can push it down the road like everybody else has done, had to do, not because they wanted to. We can push all this down the road. But what we paid the engineers for? We have some hard decisions as a council. We're not here for a popularity contest. We're not here to put people out of their homes, and we're not here to get reelected. So I'm here to make a tough decision, and I'm willing to work with everyone on the council and make sure that we get these roads done one way or another. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
And I would add, you know, we work for you. We're not here to promote a 30%. We're not even here to promote. You should absolutely do an assessment policy. We're giving you the information of what it will look like. And I will tell you, I don't envy any one of you. You have to find the balance between being able to get public infrastructure improvements done versus, you know, charges out to your residents. And it's a tough balance to find. As Tim said a couple of times tonight, there is no right answer here. There's no perfect solution. This is one of the ways that you would be able to get infrastructure projects completed, you know, at a faster rate than what you're doing now, or to even just get started. So it's the balance that you have to find.
Yeah. I'd like to make a statement on this also, and just speaking from experience, and Chris has been on the council long enough to know this also. The past councils did have to make these decisions on how in-depth we're going to do a project. And this is very aggressive. What we have here is the most aggressive plan you can possibly have to get the work done and to achieve all the things that we would all like to have done. And that's good. It's good to have it. Where we go from there, though, may be different. I don't know yet at this point. But just from experience in past councils, I would guess up to 15 different road projects in the past 15 years were completed. And Chris knows this. We had to decide at what depth we're going to go into this project. Most of it was just blacktop. Chewing up the blacktop and resurfacing because the roads were in such bad shape. And we didn't touch the infrastructure because we didn't have the funding. So we had to do what was necessary. And quite a few streets were resurfaced during the past probably 25 to 30 years, a lot of them. But resurfacing will only last, if you get 10 to 15 years, you're doing good. And that's what they've had to make the decision on. Some of the infrastructure, I'm thinking of 2nd Street, we redid the whole water system down 2nd Street. I don't know how far from Douglas down to Birch. I don't think it was all the way up to Elm. A lot of piecemealing with the sewer out of necessity. And we're not the only city. You're talking dozens and dozens of cities throughout the state and the country because of the cost. So that is this is one option. The second option is choosing projects that we want to do to the full amount. Other states, other projects that are on this list, maybe we only do the blacktop at this time. I don't know. But I think the council has to think about that with the comments, considering the comments that were brought out tonight. I would suggest not making a decision on this policy yet. Give it another month. We're not in a rush. I think you need time to think about this. Take a look at these projects, look at the costs. Maybe the 10th one down the list here, maybe we can't do the infrastructure for 10 years, but maybe we can do a blacktop that'll last 10 years until we get to it because the roads are so bad. That's what the thing that the councils in the past had to make the decision on. They knew they could do the whole infrastructure, but they could do the blacktop, and it may be 10, 15 years before they get the whole infrastructure done. Those are tough decisions to make. The budget only goes so far, as Tim knows, and he's got to struggle with that every year. And I don't help him because I bring more items for him to try to fit in. And it's a tough thing to handle. And I know that the EDA group is working very hard to try to pull in businesses, but it's something that like a person like Dave Talbot took 10 years just to get Dollar Store to come in. Well, it wasn't 10 years, probably worked on it 5 years. Just to get one little store on it, agonizing. Alcohol was a big thing. Some of them do come on their own, but most of them you got to take. It's years and years and years to plan to try to pull someone in, and to find even a developer that'll take on a small town when you've got Duluth and Cloquet right next to us, and the cities down a quick jump, and you can get to some of the bigger towns, North Branch, Forest Lake. It's hard. Development is really tough to pull in. So that I mean, I could throw in a bunch more, but I just think the council needs to think about this. You can look at this as one whole piece. You can look at it as options into it. Maybe we tackle the first couple projects and we look at this, a couple streets or a couple problems that should be done, where we don't have the in-depth analysis. Maybe that job there jumps up to where we do it. Maybe something on Knollwood we do, but yet take on some of this big infrastructure problems that should be done to the maximum. I think we have to look at it very flexibly from here because of our, I mean, to me, even if we pass the whole assessment as it is, we're not going to get to some of these streets for 10 years and they're so bad now. I don't know. You can't patch it. You're patching over patches to patch and patch. To me, there's a point where you have to take the blacktop off and it's 10 years down the road anyway till you do the big project. It may be 15 years before you do the big one. So I think your council needs to look at this very flexibly, look at the different percentages of 30 to 25 to 15, or none, if that is what happens. And you still, no matter what percentage, if it's none, you still have to look at, okay, we can do the first one or two in the next 6 years, but we still should do maybe number 10 and number 9, or we look at an individual situation where it's really affecting the citizens more than the street is, and do some other projects. I think we need flexibility in this whole thing. I'm going to stop there because I can just go on and on more about that, and it isn't going to help.
Based on this assessment right now, I just did rough math, I think it's like $17.58 for every 5% per month. So it'd be $17.58 or $210.90 a year at 5%, if you just did 5%. So it's just rough numbers that I mean, there is no easy way to do this, no matter what we do. But we have to delve into it now because there's no reason that this has been pushed on for 40 years.
No, we have
It is
to,
what it is.
Some of these have to be done, absolutely.
And Phil can attest, you got a 100-year-old infrastructure underneath, you can't just put tar on top of it. I'm in favor of 0 projects that just do that. I know other people might be, but I will not go for any one of them. Because we have infrastructure.
If it's infrastructure that's 15 years down, 15 years from now, and it's just blacktop, and the blacktop is 15,000.
Well, that's 15,000 a half, we're dealing with something different. But
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, we do need to do some of these streets.
We do, but that infrastructure is crumbling as we speak, and we're at a point where the state of Minnesota is telling us no new projects if your I&I community is where it's at. So, I mean, we're kind of damned if we do or damned if we don't.
Right?
And remember, in your scenario, Mayor, the 30% that I'm showing over that total, that's assuming everything is done. If you put together a project of 5 blocks of different streets that are mill and overlays, if you were able to identify ones that you say, all right, the utilities really aren't that bad, we can do mill and overlays for 5 or 10 blocks, whatever. Your assessment's only 30% of the street then, so you're not talking nearly that amount of money, because there's a lot more assessment for the utilities than there is, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you could still assess for a mill and overlay project. It's going to be a much, much smaller assessment because the big costs come when you dig
And
down.
to me, that's what I think we need to look at, a little flexibility in this. And I appreciate your statements.
Yeah, because our CIP is simply a guide. You might come in and say, we want 10 blocks of mill and overlay done, put together what makes the most sense. And if that's the project you want to do, well, you're absolutely going to have the flexibility to do that. Do you also want the flexibility to have alternative ways to pay for it other than just straight city monies? That's the question in front of you.
Is there another question?
I just got a comment, I'm listening to everything, and I'm just a smart taxpayer, just like everybody else here. You're a damn fool if you rip off the road and don't go down and do the repairs. I've worked in facilities too much. Chris, I 100% agree with you about taxes and getting out of town. And who's gonna buy it? I'm paying $3,000 a year in taxes in this town. I can literally walk 25 feet to my neighbor's house and pay half.
By
In the
6.
township.
They're in the township. I'm in the city. My problem is a city problem. I can't dig up the street. That's a city property. I agree with everything everybody here said. It was a shitty situation. Sorry for the French. I'm a Navy guy. That's what we do. There's no easy answer, but to not do something is unacceptable. And that's why I'm here. 20 years, nothing has happened. I agree. That is unacceptable. I can't afford it anymore either. I don't know how I can sell my house in good conscience right now. I can take a job and make the government buy it with the federal prison system. That's my best approach. And that is a sad thing. Businesses are going out because Walmart won. Amazon's kicking Walmart. We gotta do something, we have to do something. Nothing is unacceptable. That's why I'm here.
All right, I appreciate that, and we need that input. Council, any more questions, discussion?
Do we need to vote to table it, or what do we do? Just
Well, we're still in the public hearing part of it.
Yeah, you need to close the public hearing first.
Close the public hearing, and then just make the other decisions.
motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, sir.
If I can make one suggestion, it sounds like we're not going to make a decision tonight. Why don't you make a motion to table it and have me make the changes that we did agree to, so that when it bring that back, at least there's less decisions to make. And we can get a few things cleared up. And then I would ask that whether it's the council or the public or anybody that has questions about this, please give me a call or stop by City Hall, and I'd be happy to talk about it.
Matt also brought up that point of sale for the homeowner. I thought that was a good point too, that we should bring up for discussion, because Chris had brought up, you know what are we gonna do for that homeowner, and I think Ted had concerns with that. I think that's a great way of not pushing on down the line, but making sure that it's dealt with at some point in time. That would be my suggestion for us to discuss that.
Good points, very good points.
I know it's not fun to put that in there, but at the same time, it was brought up that that's done other places. I don't know.
Pretty sure we have it written, so we can have that next meeting too.
So you're asking for a
Yeah,
motion now?
that wouldn't be part of an assessment policy, that'd be separate.
It'd be a separate
City ordinance.
ordinance, yeah.
Should I have a motion to put in the changes we discussed in the?
So moved.
Second.
And to table it, just to be clear, make the changes and table it. Who seconded that?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And just one last statement. Really disappointed with all the advertisement that nobody came in from the community, which tells me something didn't work right. I mean,
Mr. Stevens.
I know.
Yeah, I read the newspaper, and I saw that the assessment was going on. That's
If it
why
went in, if it went out with all the bills and it was in the paper and we posted on the boards, I don't know what more we're gonna.
Here's the way I look at it.
Wow.
It's July.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful sunny day, and you guys are patriots as far as I'm concerned for sitting here putting up with this crap. Everyone in here. Because you could be out enjoying the weather. So don't beat yourself up that people didn't show up. They're not worried about it. The only reason I'm worried about it is because I'm worried when it's coming.
You know, and if it all, and let's say everything passed exactly as presented, and we did the first project, guarantee that everyone in every single block would be in here. What in the world? are we
Absolutely.
doing?
So don't beat yourself up too bad. This is bad.
It's disappointing though. It's just disappointing.
Yeah, well, that's the way it goes.
All right, we did have the vote. Okay.
8B.
Thank you. So now we move on to 8B. You're welcome to stay.
I can head out, I'm not.
Thank you for coming.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
8B, Minnesota DNR grant Trail to School.
I sent you guys the email, but just for the public, we received our third grant for the city loop trail or the safe route to school or whatever you want to call it. This grant is from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, the Local Trail Connections Program. We were funded at the full amount, which is $150,000. So I think we're at a total of $1,060,000.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. That's it.
Thank you for all your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Both of you.
Good job so much. Moving on to 8C, the 2018 audit financial report. A, complete. Number B, eliminated AJEs.
Yeah, so on your table is the final report and the letter to the city council. If you remember the last time he was here, he said it was a draft. So this is the final report. The only thing that changed, and it doesn't show up in there, but the only thing that changed is we talked to them about a couple of the adjusting journal entries that they had that didn't make sense, and we eliminated those. Other than that, everything that he presented still is correct.
Very good. Any questions by the council? Hearing none, is there anything else, Tim, that changes, things that you like? Different?
No.
People,
To what?
things? Okay.
People, what are you talking about?
Auditor.
Oh.
Different auditor.
Different.
Not personnel.
Oh.
All right, and nothing from the council? That's a good job, thank you very much. Moving on to 8D, Moose Lake Area Food Shelf Letter.
I thought that this was nice to include in here. I think they put it in the paper as well, but they gave me a copy and requested I give it all to you. I thought it was important that we just bring it up at the council meeting. It's a thank you to Elaine down at the Muni. And really, I would say it's a thank you to the entire community. We put out an opportunity for people to donate to the food shelf, and they did. Elaine, I talked to Elaine about it. She's going to continue to have this down there. It seems like a pretty easy way to raise money for the food shelf, and they raised $540.80. So good job to Elaine. It goes to a great cause. So thank you to all those that donated as well.
Very good, thank you. 8E, televising estimates for campground sewer system.
All right, so along the lines of the well house project, putting 2 new wells in, we want to televise the sewer system that is down by the campground, just to make sure that there's no leaks near the wells. So this is kind of the first step that goes along with that. We have one quote from Visu and one quote from, who's this? Great Lakes Pipe. The low bid, you have to look at the hourly rate, is Visu Sewer. Because it's an unknown amount of time, they were only willing to give their hourly rate, but that is certainly lower than Great Lakes Pipe. So I would request that we approve this.
A motion by the council.
I'll make that motion because I want to have some discussion.
Have a second?
That's it.
Any further discussion, questions?
Yes. Where's the money coming from?
Sewer department.
And as far as when we put our priority list together, this was a high one on that priority list, and this is the next one.
This was not a priority at all. It becomes a priority if we're doing the wells. So we've been doing all this work on the well house project. Basically, you want to make sure that, how far do you have to stay away? Is it like 50 feet?
50 feet.
The campground is certainly not within 50 feet, but it's close enough to contaminate the wells should something be wrong with those lines that are down there. So with that, we want to televise it and make sure that we don't have any issues with our lines near our wells.
So as far as what needs to be televised, this is the most important thing right now to be televised.
You can ask Phil, but if we want to do wells, yeah.
Yeah, for the well house, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is we have to do this.
I mean, I would say that as far as sewer lines go, probably the most important one to do is the one coming out of the prison in MSOP, but that doesn't have the immediate impact that this one does because we're trying to do the well project.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. 8F, LED light replacement estimates at Riverside Arena.
We did the main rink area of the arena a year, 2 years ago with LED lights. This is to do the concession, the main entry, lobby, all of those areas. The one from Nyland is for $4,709. Hunt is $6,125. If you guys were to approve this, I would also add the caveat that we bring this to the electric utility and ask for the same rebate that we've done with the other projects where they pay for the fixtures, they don't pay for the labor. So at least then I would come back if they did not approve that, and you would know that it's a different amount than what I'm telling you. So my plan is that we would bring this to the next board meeting, which would make it less than this, but the total project would be $4,709.
Good question to Harlan, that still is available, right, for the fixture?
Yes.
Very good.
There's CIP monies for that.
Very good. Council? You could also say this is how much is save in power. Saves like, well, they were saying before, a 4/5 savings in power.
I know the one business that was here, they saved a good third.
Yeah, to a third, so it's a big savings even in 1 year.
I should say that if your next question is where's the money coming from, this comes out of the capital budget for Riverside Arena.
Yeah, what I was gonna ask was, have we tracked the amount of money that we saved already with what's been done? Has there been a noticeable savings?
We have not tracked that, so I can look, but we have not tracked that, no.
I just think that all these things that keep coming up with money, and when we're doing these things that we know are saving money, I think we need to highlight those things that we're making these changes. If we're gonna spend $4,709, we're gonna recoup that money in 3 years, 4 years, whatever that may be, you know? Just so people know.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah.
I can do like a 5-year look back of what we paid for electric utilities for the arena. I can do that.
That'd be great. I just think it's necessary this day and age.
We've been tracking that for the streetlights, sir, and there's been quite a bit of reduction in that.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I can't remember, did I ask for a motion?
No, you didn't.
Do we have a motion? Sorry.
I'll make that motion. We accept the bid from Nyland with the understanding that you'll work with the.
So long as we receive the CIP
Yep.
funds from the electric utility, otherwise I'll come back
Okay.
and inform you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
At least that's what I heard you say.
Motion carried.
Very right. Every word.
8G, Carleton County Prosecutorial Services Contract.
I received a phone call from our new county attorney. who asked me if I knew that we were not paying for prosecutorial services, which I did know. We haven't been paying since 2009. She stated that she was putting together her first budget and noticed that there was no revenue, and she'd like to basically start up this contract again. I asked that she check with the county board to make sure that it wasn't like a county board decision. When I was in Proctor, St. Louis County decided not to charge cities any longer for prosecution services. So I know that there are some communities that, or some counties that have made that decision. I thought maybe Carleton County was the same. I don't know. That was long before me. I just know that we have not been paying for it. So there's nothing decided yet. I thought I would bring it up and see if anybody remembers anything from 2009, 10, 11 about that.
Give a little history, and Pierce probably remembers this. We had requested the state to help pay for the lawyer fees for MSOP and DOC. And what happened with that request, they decided yes, and they sent all the money to the county. So the county got that benefit, and we still are doing the work here without getting any money from the state. And I think at that time, the county decided not to charge us because they did get the money from the state, and we didn't. And we were the ones that requested that assistance. And they looked at it and whatever decision, that's kind of the history.
We should probably find out then how much is being sent over there, because she obviously doesn't know.
I also know that MSOP and DOC have their own contract, and they pay for prosecution services for certain items, so.
But our officers still go up there. The number of hours spent.
And the city of Carleton has their own attorney that they pay for. The city of Cloquet
So
has
is
their own
Cloquet,
attorney
yeah.
that they pay for. Based on what they're asking, the $12,500, you would be lucky to get 40 hours of service from a private
Right.
individual. But again, if we didn't have to pay it, that'd be even better.
Right, and I don't know if she's looking to up this amount or not. It was this amount for, I looked in our accounting system, it was this amount for like ever. I would just say this. We've had a lot of discussions about money, taxes, government, all of those things. My suggestion is that everybody calls our county representative and asks that we don't move forward with this. I would make the argument that what are we getting from Carleton County? What is it that the Moose Lake residents right now, I think that as far as plowing goes, that's us. If they come into town to sweep, we pay for it. If we get salt or sand, we pay for it. We pay for the things that we request from them. This seems like a pretty easy one. The court is there. County attorney is there. If we're prosecuting things at the county courthouse, it makes sense that the county attorney does it. And all of the cases are handled the same way. But that's just me.
Gary Peterson.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you need his phone number, I have his phone number. Yeah. I won't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions by the council? Moving on to 8H, training.
Yep,
Falls.
Kathy in the police department has requested to go to the Zerker training. It's in Sioux Falls, September 10th and 11th. She would drive down there, so she would leave the 9th and return the 12th. All of the meals are free. The training is free. So the only thing that we would need to pay for is the hotel and the gas to drive down there. I think that this makes sense. I know Zerker is new to all of these police departments. Her position especially needs to know how to work in that. And it's fairly cheap for what we're getting. So I would recommend that we.
What exactly is Zerker? Is that like a computer program or?
Yeah, that's the program where if they.
Statewide, right?
No, you get to decide whether or not it's the entire area.
About
here.
10 agencies that are involved in Zerker. And there's also records management side of it, it's called Zerker Suite, and then there's also the patrol side. So Zerker Mobile, what she's wanting to do is be able to take care of all the reports that come out of that, and I can tell you Zerker has had to come to Carleton County 20 sometimes. So for her to go get training that would make her proficient for 2 days is probably pretty reasonable.
I agree.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the request to send Kathy to the Zerker training.
I'll second.
Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 8I, city administrator contract, I believe at this point we need to close.
Do you want to do J prior to?
I suppose we could do J. ATVs. I would just want to bring this up to the council again. I'm getting numerous complaints throughout the city. The people on ATVs, citizens about ATVs, excuse me. And I know this comes up every so many years. Speeding, cutting corners, going through stop signs. Kyle has a lot of complaints of no matter how many signs he puts up, they seem to just still go right through past his signs into the parking lot where they have their events and people. I just want to bring this up again. I don't know how many you have. Do you have problems up by the garage?
We actually don't. The issues we have with ATVs is them picking rocks up on the Blacktop Trail. And the intersections, you see rocks all over the intersections.
And this was a suggestion that was made at, actually the chamber meeting, well, it was at the AGA dates. The person, because of watching what's happened down there, just kind of checking it out with farmer's market, asked, why not put a gate up at the end of our road, closing that road coming down through so ATVs can't go through, and just say have no admittance when it's closed. And of course, you'd have to put a sign up at the top of the road saying, you know, no ATV access during the events at the arena. And then, of course, open the gate and take the sign down at the other end. And I thought that's probably a good way to stop ATVs from going through that area during events.
Just during events, you want to close the gate?
Well, I would think that would solve the problem with ATVs going through there when there are events.
At the arena?
At the arena, yeah.
So then you're closing it every Saturday.
Saturday morning, when they have the flea market, they have the farmer's market.
I think that's all gonna just encourage people to look down the road. It's gonna cause a lot more problems with traffic. That's what I could see.
I think it would be better than almost running over people down at the arena.
Well, maybe we need to have a squad sitting there on Saturday mornings.
Well, we could try that, but there just might be new people coming every week.
Well, that's what it is. It's usually not people from Moose Lake, it's people out of town that are coming down through there. And
I definitely like the ATVs coming here, they do bring in revenue. I do realize that some people definitely have some issues with them.
But I do because I get the complaints from people. And I'm the one who seemed to get them instead of anybody else. And I get it constantly on Fifth Street for the people that live up past me because of all the dirt. Every time an ATV, they get a cloud of dust that comes through their homes, and in the summer days, they can't open their windows, or it's just constant cleaning. So I get that complaint every time I walk down the street. So I do have a problem with them.
You're talking about on the trail there.
Well, coming off the trail, coming down Fifth Street. They come right down Fifth Street, which is right down by where Gasser's business is at the bottom of the hill.
Some of them maintain their speed, drive slow, and then some of them just come through like a bunch of hooligans.
The two areas I get complaints from is Fifth Street and down at the arena. And Kyle said it's just a constant problem every time they have an event there. The ATVs come right through. He has signs posted, but they still come right between the arena and the grass, and there's stands up, there's people walking back and forth between the different tables or whatever. It's just a ridiculous situation there. I thought, I like their idea, close it every Saturday morning. Once the events are done, open it up again. I thought it was a good solution myself.
You need to have a gate on both sides though, because they just put under the dirt road and then come back.
Well, you could put a sign up there, no ATV access.
Well, if you have signs now and they're not gonna follow the sign down there.
I think we have 8. Oh, we added 11. We have 11.
Well, if you put a gate up there, then no cars would be able to come down through there to the farmer's market.
I think a gate would cause a lot more problems than it's gonna solve.
Well, then we need another solution, because what's going on now doesn't work. Do we pay a police officer to sit there all morning? That doesn't sound feasible either.
You're already paying a police officer to work. I mean, and I don't know how much you can educate people either, but
I know.
what people are coming down there for is to get gas. So is
Absolutely.
there a better way for them to divert during those times to fuel up their ATVs? Because we want that traffic in town, because it's tourism. So how do you go about that? Is there another way?
That's how I'm throwing it out. I heard that suggestion, so I said, all right, I'll bring it. We are getting complaints about it.
Yep,
So-
and that's never ending for sure.
So I'll just leave that with the council. That's something to think about. If you come up with another suggestion, I'm all for yours, I'm all for it.
Well, maybe if we start, just ask if Bryce could have his officers swing through there more Saturday mornings and see how it goes. It's deterring people to slow down maybe.
We could dig a fall pit and cover it up. So when they drive through, they fall down in there and then they can't get out.
What's hard for, and you probably know this, what's hard is, okay, Guy will call the police, by the time they get there, the ATVs are long gone.
Or they're
You
at the
can't
gas
capture
pumps
them.
or whatever, so.
Yeah. you
Phil, what
can't
did you
capture
Is
have?
there something we can, maybe the DNR can help us out with some of this?
Well, the DNR also has officers that are working. I mean, if you have an event, you can request that. I mean, we do have local people living in town here.
Right.
I think more presence is obviously better, but you're coming back to the same issue. You need to divert the traffic away from the troubled area and allow people to have access to fuel. That's what they're looking for.
You were up on the law on that too. Can the ATVs go down 73 instead of 5th Street?
Well, the county's changed. The county roads, they can go on county roads now where they couldn't before. It had to be from access point to access point. That's the only time they could, but now they can drive on county roads. So what we can do in the city is with ordinances, but ordinances are very difficult to enforce. You're giving them a citation with an ordinance is pretty useless.
Is 73 considered a state road?
That's a state road. Can they drive down the state road in ATV?
I don't believe so.
There was some rules about if it was on a state highway, you're supposed to do this unless, I think there was something about unless there's no ditch.
Yeah,
Because there's no
the
ditch.
statute's
along
very,
73 as well.
very foggy because you have different classifications. The typical ATV that we usually think of has changed so much. They have side-by-sides, they have a multitude of different vehicles that have different rules.
Now, I know we have a developer that wants to build 2 triplexes there, which is even going to compound the problem if we got ATVs and 2 more triplexes. And that gulch is still there. I mean, it's just going to get worse up there.
We might have to shut that road down or change it, move it to a different area. It's just,
If they just went down a little farther to the north road on the trail and came down the North Road right to Gasser's business, that would solve the problem of Fifth Street.
Something we can definitely look into.
I have one other option, and that is to tell them to call the other council members.
Well, I think you need to, again, we have addressed this before, it is an enforcement issue. I think you need to bring it up with the police chief and have somebody sitting down there. You can also, again, to talk with the DNR, we have local people living in town, and see if we can have an enforcement date.
All right, I just want to bring it to your attention. If you have any other suggestions or ideas, I'd be grateful with it. I would like to change that Fifth Street route because of the dust problem up there for the homes that are affected by it. It's every single day, it's not just weekends, it's every day for them. The next item, 8I, City Administrator Contract, and we do have to close for contract. No, I don't want to. We have a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, we're closed, and we'll get